Ballot?
What's movie ballot?
What's movie ballot?
It's the political compass test for movies.
Alright, welcome to Movie Ballot. This is Richard Eve, Heat Ray UK, take your pick. And this week we're going to be looking at The French Dispatch, which is a Wes Anderson movie. And if you've seen Wes Anderson's films, then you know that's all you need to know. And our first proposition, unlawful violence is sometimes justified. Well, I would say the position of this film is not that it's necessarily justified, but perhaps sometimes sympathetic. Moreover, just perhaps a thing that just happens. Moral transgressions are dealt with playfully, I would say. So I'm going to move it 1 point to the left and 1 point downwards towards libertarianism. Next proposition, class divides more than group. In the organization itself, the French Dispatch that's portrayed in the film, class doesn't seem to be much of a decider. The editor-in-chief only seems to really care about whether or not you can bring a decent story, whereas elsewhere in the film, conflicts seem to occur more along political lines. So I would say it's a soft no on that proposition, so we're going to move the French Dispatch 1 point towards the left. Next proposition, institutions should be regulated. Well, there doesn't seem to be much regulation going on at the French Dispatch. I mean, you have a self-appointed meritocrat at the top, but underneath that everything's pretty fluid. You know, as hierarchies go, this is a very liberal structure. So one across to the left and one down. Next proposition, authority should be questioned. Well, surprisingly for this sort of film, only to an extent, I think. People should be given certain liminal spaces, let's say, but we are encouraged to value the experience of elders where relevant. So I'm going to move the movie back one towards the center. Next proposition, there is no right or wrong, only different. Well, there is a certain moral relativism about this movie. It's quite loose and cheerful about that sort of thing. I'm going to say a soft yes, because it doesn't precisely come down on the side of the proposition, but it's happy to have it at the table, so to speak. So one down towards libertarianism. Next proposition, punishment, not rehab. Again, this is an issue that the movie treats quite playfully, but I'm going to say a soft no on that. One left. Next proposition, people should conform to traditional roles. Nah, I don't think this movie or any of Wes Anderson's movies are strongly in favor of this. Indifferent perhaps as to whether or not people do conform to traditional roles, but his canon does seem to suggest that change and self-invention are a benefit. So I'm going to go one down and one across. Next, religion and morals are the same. Hard no. Down two and across one. Next, sex outside marriage is wrong. Again, pretty much irrelevant really. It's not going to move on that because disagreeing with that proposition is pretty much the central position, so no movement. Final proposition, homosexuality is amoral. Well, this film does have gay characters in it, but we don't see them in positions of intimacy like we do with the heterosexual characters, so I suppose you could argue that there's a slight imbalance when it comes to representation, if you wanted to argue that. I don't necessarily want to argue that, but you could. But I'm going to say no, of course not. So one down and one left. Okay, so where does that put the French Dispatch? Well, it places it here, and it edges towards the position we call social anarchism, which is a branch of anarchism that sees individual freedom as interrelated with mutual aid. So if that's the kind of politics you enjoy, then you might enjoy this film. If you also enjoy being bored out of your tits by relentless and gratingly cutesy stylistics, then you might enjoy this film. Well, thank you very much. That's all for this week. I've been Richard Eve, and this is Movie Ballot, the political compass test for movies. Next week, Top Gun Maverick. That's right, Top Gun Maverick.